please try to help me understand in your assessment, in your opinion. I mean, you are working with students for such a long time. When we talk of cyber safety and security, in your understanding, how important is this topic? And if you think it is important, why do you think it is important? Because this topic is something related to psychological issues. So, do you think it is important? And if you think so, kindly give me a couple of reasons why you think so. So, please type that in the chat box. So, people are saying yes, extremely important. Okay. Yes. Can you please also mention why you think it is important? Okay, it's going to very, very important now. It distracts them from studies. Okay, thank you. The number is increasing. Yes. Any other reasons why it is important? Protect the students from being victims. Great. It's important because of behavioral changes. Yes. It affects their physical fitness, of course. Psychological state of mind impacts overall efficiency of the person. Good. Students are screen dependent because they interact with unknown person. Cases are increasing. It will keep them safe from cyber crimes. Affect their studies. It identify safeguarding. They spend more time rather than spending on books to create awareness. Behavior and mind are the one that affects a lot. Good lifestyle of people, especially when in adolescents, they are most vulnerable. Good mental ability. The real world is virtual world. Great. They may be misleading. Health and emotional aspects get compromised, and like cyber addiction may lead to insomnia as well. They become addicted. Good. They are not yet able to make rational decisions. Very good. Their life starts revolving around games. Mental health is vital because that guides to do the work. Students do not know they are the future. Yes, internet has crippled their mind, physical and psychological health. Very important because nowadays students are mostly indulging in internet and gadgets. Okay, good. Uh, Overcoming from addiction. Because teacher, I have witnessed few cases where social media affects mental health. Great. Behavioral changes. They are not in the real world. They don't focus on studies. Threat to social reputation. Different ways of abusing harms to become weak on mental health. It's internet era. Most of them engaged. Yes, they can lead to stress and anxiety, unable to concentrate in skill development. We are facing a lot of cyber crime. Yes, we can make them use in time of pandemic, but it's hard to divert them. Great. So they are so removed from reality, they can't handle real life situations. In my school, there was a kid who leaves home, went back school on time, but was absent throughout. He was going to internet cafe to play games, prevention of online harassment and cyber bullying. Once they attract the virtual world, it leads to addiction, need to take on ecosystem of psychomotor development. It affects physical as well as mental health. Great. Behavior changes are evident, cognitive and psychomotor skills, they decrease. Children become so aggressive. Most of the students are a teenager. How to make them understand is a big issue for us. Great. Giving more importance than family relations, challenges to face the society in future. It is important because it affects various aspects of one's life. Peer pressure, it affects overall health. Great. So I think you know a lot already, and this is really encouraging. So these messages that they tell me that yes, it is something that is relevant to your work. Because see, once a topic is relevant to our work, it becomes more important and more interesting to us. And then it makes a lot of sense for us to talk about it as well. Another important message there, managing emotions are becoming difficult for our students. Great. So when we talk of this concept, you already know that this is very important, and there are, I mean, more than I think 100 messages are already there. So there are so many reasons why it is important. Now, in this reduce face-to-face interaction, another important point that has come up in the chat box. So in this session, which will last till 3:30 p.m., what we are going to do is we are going to cover a few important but very basic issues. For example, I will try to give you a perspective that in what way psychological issues become important in terms of cyber safety. There are many ways. Some of these you have already highlighted, but there are few beyond this as well. So in the first part or the first section of my presentation, I'll do that. Somebody has typed important for emotional control and balance is again important. So that will be the first section. Then we will learn in what ways psychological issues can be experienced. In the third section, we will talk about how to identify that there is a student who needs help. And finally, we will discuss what is it that they can do. They can do a lot. In fact, all of us can do a lot to improve our own psychological well-being, especially in the context of cyberspace. But we will also learn when is it that you need to have external help. And by external, I mean it can be a teacher or a counselor or even a mental health professional, because some of these problems can be very severe at times. So that is what we are going to cover. So when I will go through this presentation, if you have any doubts or any questions, please feel free to type it in the chat box at very moment. Don't wait till the end, because at times this duration becomes very limited, 1.5 hours, and we might not have time at the end of the session. So please feel free to put in your questions depending on the section that we are talking about. So if you want to know something about the intervention, please wait till the last section. So sequentially we can go depending on what we are discussing. Now, it is a fact that while we are concerned that excessive time in digital space or cyberspace can affect our psychological well-being, but it is a reality of modern world that most of us, we have to access this space for one reason or the other. And there are multiple reasons, especially when we think in terms of our students' life. We use internet and digital devices for educational purposes, for communication related issues, for identifying and seeking information, for entertainment, for recreation, for connecting with other people, for buying things online. So there are so many ways for which, and so many reasons because of which students, both children as well as adolescents, they venture into digital space. So while it is a fact that it can impact them in a negative way, but we also need to remember and understand that for most of us, it is part of our daily life now. So that is why it becomes even more critical that we talk about it. For example, there are some behaviors that our children and adolescents, they can engage in, which we can tell them, okay, please don't do it. It is not good. For example, typically we tell them, don't smoke, don't drink, don't take drugs. They are not good for you. But the same message doesn't work for cyberspace, because there are so many good things that they can do while they are in cyberspace. So we cannot just tell them that don't use internet or don't use mobile phones. We need to kind of strike a balance between what is a healthy use and what is unhealthy use. And we need to understand the difference between the two. And we need to help our students find ways to use internet in a positive or a meaningful way, while at the same time not experiencing the negative consequences. So this is the background because of which NCERT decided that there should be a session on this particular theme. And this again is very important in many ways. And in the first section, we will learn about that as well. So this is the layout of this session. Okay, I can see another message. Sometimes students get isolated or taken aback from their friend circle. Yes, such cases are very difficult to bring back to normalcy. I completely agree. And we will discuss why that happens and what we can do to prevent or manage that situation. So these are the 5 main sections that we have. We will learn what are the dimensions of psychological well-being in context of cyber safety and security. Then what are the specific adverse psychological consequences? Now the session is primarily focused on psychological issues, but we will touch briefly on physical health as well, because that again is critical. And when people use digital devices excessively, especially or in the wrong way, it can impact our physical health as well. So we will touch upon that as well. We will learn some basic tips and tricks to ensure healthy presence in cyberspace. And again, these are not very complicated interventions. These are very simple things. Many of these you already might be knowing, but again, we can discuss and share among ourselves what these are. We will also learn how to identify the red flag signs. What that means is how to pick up early that, okay, this particular student is already experiencing some problem. So let us do something for him or her. And finally, briefly, we will talk who are the people who can help them and in what way the help can be sought. So this is the layout of this particular session. So let's begin with the first element. Now, before I share with you my thoughts, can you kind of let me know that when somebody is in digital space or cyberspace or using a digital device, how psychological well-being will be impacted? What is the mechanism behind it? Why would that happen? For example, somebody is playing games online or watching videos online or being there online for any reason. Why the psychological impact will be there? What are the different mechanisms through which it can happen? What comes to your mind in response to this question? Hormones, okay. Virtual versus real. Emotions, people being isolated, yeah. You may get confused between real and virtual world. Games, which lead to rewards, yes. Addiction, isolation, aggressive games, great. Health family. Playing games may lead to release of dopamine. Okay, they feel someone is there to listen to them. Need for validation. Children wants to be like those in virtual world. They will get relaxation and enjoyment initially. Can lead to anxiety, withdrawn, lonely, agitated. Persuades them to elicit their desire, I believe. Avoiding meeting people. Their worldly fear is far away. They get restless if we don't restrain them. Addiction, it is colorful, yes. Difficult to regulate emotions. Addiction, social relation. Metabolic disorder, okay. Prolonged use of PCs affect their thinking power. Recognition, imaginary pleasure. Blue light, dopamine addiction. They want privacy. Low appetite. Social media addiction, okay. So I'm getting a sense of the line in which you are thinking. Focus on his psychological feelings, aggressive behavior, great. So see, some of these are actually the consequences. So what we are discussing is the consequences we will move to in a while. But at this, okay, I'll read another message. When someone watches something online, it actually is a reflection of their thoughts, and social media captures their interest and shows the same kind of content, making the person feel it's the only comfort space. Great. Mood swings. Yeah. So right now, what we are going to learn is that please remember, many times when we think of psychological well-being, we straight away think about addiction. Now, addiction is important. Yes, that happens, but that's not the only problem or the only mechanism through which the problem happens. Somebody says contact unknown person. Yes. So this is a different dimension that we will talk about. Physical activity, yes. So please remember, addiction is very important, and I will talk about it as well. But please remember, when a student who is a child or an adolescent who ventures into digital space, psychological health can be impacted in many ways. For example, when somebody is in a digital space and experiences a fraud or a cyber crime or a scam, or their data is lost, somebody steals their data, which can be their pictures, um, or any other account details, and then they misuse their account. So now this is not addiction, this is seemingly appropriate use of internet, but since there are cyber crimes that can happen, and when somebody experiences these cyber crimes, it can lead to negative emotions because nobody likes to be a victim of a crime. So when you experience these crimes, for example, identity theft, data theft, frauds, online scams, that is one way in which psychological health and well-being can be impacted. So please remember, it's not just addiction. There are different ways. So throughout this training, you will learn a lot about cyber safety, cyber security. So that is critical from mental health angle as well. Not only you use your money or use your data or you lose there is a legal angle involved. There is a mental health dimension as well in terms of being a victim of cybercrime. So that is one way. The second way is there are times when our students, they are in digital space and they themselves engage in something which may be illegal or inappropriate. For example, downloading a content which is copyright protected. It can be a music or a video or a movie. Now, many times such activities may get unnoticed or undetected, but at times, I mean, as per the law, it will be considered an illegal activity. And there are cases when people are kind of booked under the law for doing such activities and behaviors. Now, please again see, this is not addiction. This is using internet or digital space to do an act which is not legally sanctioned. Now, again, it may seem like, okay, they are being engaged in illegal activity or a criminal activity even. So this should be a legal issue. It is a legal issue. But please remember, whenever people experience such issues, it also impacts their psychological well-being in a negative way. Yes, there is a term, plagiarism. Great. So this is very important in context of our students. Plagiarism is something which is not acceptable in academics. It includes schools as well. Now, when this is detected, now it may not be a legal case. Nobody may go to police or something, but when you will tell your student that, okay, what you have produced as your work is not your, and when that realization happens, it can also impact their psychological health. So that is the second way in which it can impact the psychological well-being. The third way it can impact their psychological well-being in digital spaces when these students are victims of specific kind of cyber crimes. And I'm not talking about frauds or data theft or identity theft. I'm talking about some activities that happen online which are not good for the people against whom these are targeted. And three most common one of these are cyberbullying, cyber stalking, and cyber grooming. Somebody has mentioned not audible. I believe most of you can hear me. So please check your speaker setting. I think people are able to hear me. So these are the three ways in which, again, you are not addicted. You are not doing anything wrong yourself, but simply because you are in cyberspace, you are experiencing a negative event. And there can be cyberbullying, which is one of the most commonly reported adverse experience in online space. Now, bullying is again something that we are familiar with. It happens in physical spaces, physical world. But when it happens online or digital space, it is even more troublesome because for bullying to happen in a physical space, the victim and the bully have to be in the same space. But in an online world, you need not be even close. You can be in remote parts of the world and still you can experience this. It also changes the dynamics a lot. For example, in physical space, the person who is the bully is typically a senior student, maybe physically more strongly built, maybe more aggressive in terms of personality traits. But when it comes to online or digital space, the age doesn't matter. Your physical strength doesn't matter. You can intimidate people with your actions and gestures by posting things which are mean, which are hurtful, and which can lead to the experiences which are even worse than bullying in physical space. So that is cyberbullying. Second is cyber stalking, where people use internet or electronic means to stalk or harass somebody. This again is something that happens in online space. It can be done on an one-on-one basis. For example, there is one person stalking somebody. It can be a group of people, a group of students who are harassing a particular child online. And this, please remember, it need not be that they post something about them. At times, exclusion is also a strategy that is used. So I need not post something bad about you to harass you. Simply excluding you from a group of other class students can be as troublesome to the student, because you are no longer seen as a part of the class. You are seen as somebody who is outside of the group. So that can be emotionally challenging or traumatic for some students. And then in some extreme cases, we encounter cyber grooming as well, where somebody tries to befriend somebody online with an intent to engage in some kind of an abuse, physical abuse or sexual abuse. So this is relatively less common, but this also happens. So these are some examples where the child is definitely not addicted. In fact, not even doing something wrong on internet, but still, simply because they are there on internet, they are just minding their own business. Still, they can experience these events, and this again can lead to negative psychological consequences. Of course, we all know one of another important reasons why psychological well-being gets impacted is when they spend excessive time. Now, this is one of the most obvious reasons or causes that impact psychological well-being, because please remember, we all have fixed number of hours in a day. So whenever anyone spends a particular time in cyberspace, they take that time out of that 24-hour day. So the more time you spend in cyberspace, the less is available for the physical world around us. And this is a very simple mathematical equation. So if you're spending much more time in cyberspace, you're spending much less time doing other things as part of your daily routine. And there are many problems which can happen because of this reason. So please remember, there are 4 different ways in which psychological well-being can be impacted. First is you experience a cyber crime in terms of fraud or data theft or identity theft. Second, you experience some behaviors online or some actions online which are not good for you. For example, cyberbullying, cyber stalking, cyber grooming. Then you may indulge in some illegal or not appropriate activities online, and that can also affect you psychologically. And of course, if you are spending a lot of time online, which is excessive and for the wrong reason or at a wrong time, that can also contribute to negative psychological effects. Yeah, so somebody mentioned missing physical activity. Yes, so if you are spending too much time in cyberspace, you will have little time left for your physical work. So these are 4 ways in which our psychological well-being may be impacted. So this is the first part of my presentation. So if you have any doubts or any questions about it, please feel free to type that in the chat box. Or if you would like to add something to it, please do that as well. I'll just wait for a couple of seconds to see if there are any questions or any comments there. Okay, so somebody asked me, what is cyber grooming? Okay, let me go back there. So what happens in cyber grooming is typically a person who happens to be an adult in most of the cases. They create these fake accounts online. They will send you a friend request. They will talk nice things about you. They will try to please you. They will try to make them like you. And then they start having this online conversation. They may ask their contact details. Where do you live? Would you like to meet me in person? So they are trying to assume this false identity and trying to befriend a younger person. Their intent is not noble, because ultimately their intent is to kind of meet this person physically and engage in some kind of an abusive activity. So this is called grooming. So they groom them to like them, to create that connection with them, and then they misuse this online connection by committing some kind of abuse in the physical world with them. So that is cyber grooming. Okay. Bullying, stalking, like words looks alarming, but grooming doesn't sound alarming. Yeah, it basically depends on our perspective. You are correct in a way, because grooming we associate with our own grooming, physical grooming and all. So grooming here is used in the same sense. So you are grooming somebody for your own motives, which are not noble or positive. So that is the way it is. That is the connotation that it has. Okay, so that was the first part. Now, second part, let's learn about what are the specific adverse psychological consequences. And many of these you have already mentioned. But let me ask you again, besides addiction, because addiction, I believe everybody will talk about. So let me ask you this question. Besides addiction, what are the negative psychological consequences and physical consequences? That means mental health and physical health. What are the specific negative consequences that can happen when students are in digital space besides addiction? Low self-esteem, yeah. Smart learning in how can we manage the children? Okay, this is a good question. So these days, online learning is encouraged. How we can prevent it from negative consequences? I'll come to that in the last part. Obesity, depression, body gets weak, inactivity, stress, lack of concentration, loss of appetite, weak eyesight, dependency. I won't talk because addiction. I have loss of skills, eyesight issues, insomnia, not focusing on studies, stress, problems in eyesight, anxiety, frustration, poor health, lack of concentration, not interested in studies, neck and other body parts, restlessness, dementia. Okay. Frustration, health issues, low concentration, anxiety, aggression, confusion, not able to focus, feel lonely, irritability, back pain, excessive dependency, mental stress, aggression, grow impatient. I don't know what that means. They become absent-minded, laziness, lack of communication skills, emotional imbalance, autism, isolated, poor social relations, lack of interest, living in virtual world, lack of interest, loss of problem solving ability, dependency on others, validation, lack of confidence, detachment, phobia, posture defect, fear of missing out, physical obesity, memory loss, aggressive behavior, distance from family, reduced creative thinking, compare themselves, their life with others, lack of focus, loss of appetite, irritable, don't respect, stress, they talk less, sleepiness or sleep problems, loss of problem solving ability, isolation. Great. So basically, we are getting a very nice mix of responses there. Being introvert, feeling guilty. So first, let me correct some misconception that I'm able to understand from these messages. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, okay, depression, social isolation. So please be very mindful that losing individuality, okay. So when you think or you consider in terms of psychological issues, so what we are talking here is what are the psychological consequences which happen because of these negative experiences or excessive time being spent online. So when you use the word dementia, now dementia is a disease which happens in old age. In dementia, there are problems with memory. So it is not a problem of young age. So that is not a consequence because of excessive use or any other psychological problem in cyberspace. Access to inappropriate content, great. And this is important. Trust issue. So dementia is not a consequence. Similarly, autism, yes, it is a disease of children, but it is not caused by being in cyberspace. So please, this is very important because at times we confuse some other diseases as a cause or as a consequence of being in cyberspace. So dementia and autism, they do not result from being online or even excessively being online. So they are not because of this. Sexual hyperactiveness, yes, that manifestation can be there. So thank you for all these responses. Yeah, poor economical status, great. So now you're thinking, good. So please remember, I deliberately asked you inferiority complex, psychological and physical. But please remember, psychological issues can happen in two ways. A, they can be a direct consequence, and B, it can be an indirect consequence. For example, so Alzheimer's is a dementia. It is not caused by being online. It happens in old age, so it is a memory problem. Now, please remember, psychological issues can happen because directly psychological problems happen, or they can happen indirectly. For example, somebody mentioned you lose a lot of money online, which can be for many reasons. You were gambling, you were buying stuff, you were playing some games where money is involved, and because of economic loss, you start feeling negative emotions. So that is the indirect pathway. Similarly, the initial problem was you were not able to study, you fail in your exams. So the main problem is you are not able to study and you are failing in your exam, but it can also indirectly affect our psychological well-being. So the psychological well-being can be affected directly or through indirect channels as well. So it's very critical to look at all the dimensions. So now there is a message that says, but they are not exercising their thinking skills, hence it can lead to dementia. So again, Reshma ji, I like to mention here, dementia is a specific disease which happens in old age. So when people have attention, concentration, or memory problems at a young age, when they are children or adolescents, dementia is not the word that we use. There are different terms that are used for that. So that should not be confused with that. Overreaction to shadow their guilt work, short memory. Yeah. So excessive presence in cyberspace, particularly doing some activities, can shorten your attention span. So you may not be able to focus for long on a task at hand, or you may not be able to retain the information because you're not concentrating well. So those are the kind of issues that can happen. Less patience and highly aggressive, yes. Unrealistic views, lack of clarity on thought, socialization process gets hindered, great. So yes, low self-esteem, focus diversion, yes. So these are the kind of issues that are happening there, and you are very correct there. So now addiction does happen, but I will talk about it at the end deliberately because there are so many other things that can happen as well. Social comparison, sleeplessness, yes. So the most common experiences that people have, especially children and adolescents, they are called negative emotional reactions. Lag behind the normal learning process, yes, that can happen as well. Stress can happen as well. Yeah, that's correct. So the most common set of consequences which happen in lot more people than the number of people who have addiction is what is called as negative emotional reactions. So these are negative emotions which are not pleasant in nature. For example, there may be feelings of panic, feelings of fear, anger, frustration, blaming themselves, feeling helpless, or even feeling vulnerable. If you are a victim of a crime, you will hesitate going online again because you are afraid whether I will experience the same thing again. So please remember low self-esteem, substance use, yes, those are also the consequences. I'll come to that. Fantasy thinking, yes. So the most common consequences are these negative emotional reactions. Now, this is important for us to understand because these negative reactions are not actually what is called as mental disorders or mental health problems. So these are emotions that they experience. So many times what happens is unless somebody is having very severe problems, we assume that there is everything fine. There are no issues at all. But please don't confuse that, because in children and adolescents, many times they have only these negative reactions, and that can be troublesome for them a lot. It can prevent them from focusing on studies. It can impact their appetite. It can impact their sleep as well. So, even though they are not having a mental disorder or a disease per se, and I will come to that in a while, they can still be experiencing many negative emotions, and it can lead to many problems in their lives. So, that is one set of problem. So, prenatal causes of disability occurred in parents using social media can have any psychological effect on children. So, prenatal causes of any disability occurred in parents using social media. See, if I'm understanding it correctly, you're asking me that if parents had some problem, will it affect children in terms of that? So, see, here we are talking about the impact of students' own behavior. We're not talking about things which may be related to genetics or something else. So that is not the focus of this session. We are simply talking about when the student ventures into cyberspace, what kind of consequences can happen. So that is what we are discussing. So whether genetics play a role or not, that is being researched. There are some suggestions, there are some findings that tell us yes, genetics also play a role. But right now we are targeting the behavior of the students, which is direct, not which they receive from their parents. So that is not the focus that we have right now. So this is the first set of complications that can happen. This happens in a very large proportion of students who experience these negative consequences. So please remember, they may be very mild, they may be very subtle at times. So you need to be very sensitive to pick these up. A child who, without any reason, becomes irritable or angry, and you are not able to figure out what is happening. There is everything normal in his life or her life. So try to figure out that there may be a problem because of their time being spent in cyberspace. So these kind of emotions can be experienced by them. Now, the second set of problems that happen because of excessive time or even experiencing a negative event in cyberspace is what is called as diagnosable psychiatric disorders. So these are mental health conditions which are diagnosed as a disorder, which means they just don't disappear on their own in most of the cases. So once they start, they need to be detected and they need to be treated. So some of the students that you have, they may end up experiencing depressive disorder or anxiety disorder, or there is something called as acute stress disorder. Now, these are not negative experience. These are diagnosable mental health conditions. And what that means is, if they have these, they need to be referred to a mental health professional because they have to be diagnosed and then they have to be treated for these problems. So that is very critical. So that is the second set of adverse consequences. Then there is a third set where, sir, is depression dangerous? Yes. So depression, if it is a mental health disorder, it is dangerous. It can be potentially lethal. People who have depression may have ideas of self-harm. They may attempt suicide, and it can lead to death as well. So depression is a serious mental health condition in that sense. So it should be identified, diagnosed, and treated as soon as possible. There should not be any delay. Now, besides the negative emotions and the mental health diagnosis that they can have, there are many other consequences that they can experience. For example, many of you have typed aggression. Yes. Many of you have typed that they are not able to develop social skills or life skills or problem solving skills or interpersonal communication skills. So you may have students who are very good in communicating over a social media app, but when you ask them to speak somebody face to face, they find it very challenging to start a conversation. To the same list, there are some other issues like negative self-image. I think that also somebody has typed earlier in the chat box. So many times what happens is when you post something online and you do not get a response that you wanted, for example, nobody liked it, nobody shares it, people post critical comments in response to it. So when you start evaluating yourself through the eyes of others, through their comments or their responses, it can lead to negative self-image or poor self-esteem at times. Somebody also talked about fear of missing out. That again is a very common issue these days. So many times, what our students feel and they think is that if they do not participate in these activities, or they are not always checking their social media account or visiting the online platforms time and again, they will miss out on something that their peer group is engaged in, or they will be kind of thrown out of that social circle or that social group. So, this fear of missing out also makes them use these platforms, these applications, their phones, and the internet more than what they would like to do. So, that is another set of concern. So, negative emotions, a diagnosable mental health condition, and many other negative psychological consequences can be experienced. Somebody is saying my child requests for mobile phone frequently when he is free. What are the activities to engage him? So we will come to this when we'll come to the interventions. We will discuss that. So please hold on to that question. Inferiority complex, yes, that's another name for negative self-image. So please remember, they may not have a mental health illness, but they can still have experiences or concerns which can impact their development, which can impact their confidence, which can impact their skills as they grow up. Especially in rural areas where we have illiterate parents and they do not understand the psychological changes in children happening due to social media, children even commit suicide without sharing their problems. Yes. So that is something that is alarming, because what happens at times is children, they don't feel comfortable sharing their concerns with others, even their parents or teachers. And when they are so distressed because of these thoughts, at times they even attempt as well, and they might die because of these attempts as well. Writing skills can get impacted, yes. If you are not having a habit of writing, you prefer to type, that can get impacted, yes. That is again an important thing. So what I'm trying to emphasize is, do not just think in terms of depression, anxiety, because that is the common terms people use, but the experience are way beyond that, and that is why it is so critical. So maybe depression and anxiety a psychiatrist can treat, but what about this poor self-esteem, negative self-image, fear of missing out? These kind of concerns, they will be hampering their growth and their development in many ways. Loneliness, yes, that can be another experience that they can have. That's true. Now, the final set of problems, they happen because they are spending too much time. Now, too much time means it is a very relative concept. So there is no absolute cutoff that, okay, beyond these many hours, it becomes too much. So it is very relative. For example, if I have 5 hours of free time in my day, 5 hours is too much. But if I have only 1 hour of free time in my day, then 1 hour is also too much. So you have to see what is the proportion of this time as compared to the overall time that is available to them. So when they are spending relatively excessive time, it can disturb their sleep-wake cycle. They may keep on using their mobile phones late in the evening or even at night. So they will sleep later, they will wake up later. Or it may also impact their eating habits. Many times they are so busy using their phones that they just want to finish their food as fast as they can, and they may skip eating nutritious food. Or when they move to hostels, they may start ordering online and they may start eating unhealthy food or calorie dense food. So it can impact their eating habits. And since they are also not exercising, it can lead to being overweight or obesity, as some of you have already mentioned. So somebody talked about, please highlight about FOMO. So FOMO is basically fear of missing out. So it means that you feel that you are not part of something that others are doing. For example, I mean, it's a very not, I mean, you'll find it hard to connect to this example. For example, there is a group of teachers who are supposed to participate in this training, but one of you is not allowed to log in. So if you have the concern, okay, what is happening there in the group? What is it the rest of them are doing? So that is the kind of concern we are talking about. So when it shifts to, say, a social media platform, so some students have created a group for themselves on a social media platform, and they have left somebody out of it. So you start thinking, okay, they must be planning to do some activities, or they may be having a good time. They may be sharing things with each other, which I'm not able to access. So that is what fear of missing out means. So somebody says like TikTok Reels should also be banned. So that's something that we have discussed in the beginning. So banning internet, banning smartphone is not going to work, because trust me, smartphones will never be banned. Internet will never be banned. So that is why our task is even more challenging. We need to figure out how we can help our students learn to live with internet and live with social media and live with other activities that they can do online and still be healthy. So that is why we are discussing these issues. Now, finally, we use the word addiction. At times, people use a different term. It's called excessive and problematic use. In China and US, unnecessary content is banned only, yeah, but somehow we are not in China or India. China or US, we are in India. Again, I am not in a position to make new laws, so I can't tell you why the law has not been made. So that's beyond my competence and beyond my skill set and beyond my position. But yes, we can always do the advocacy that government should do something about it, and there are efforts that are going on in that direction. But it's not an easy job. It's not an easy task. It's very difficult to implement, because there are ways around circumventing these things. You would have heard that some time back some games were banned. It didn't mean that they just disappeared. They are still there in India. People do play them. So it's very challenging. So that's why we are not talking about how to ban. That's not our domain. That is somebody else's domain. Our domain is how to help our students to avoid having these problems. So that's the issue that I'm talking about. I think I'm speaking fairly loudly. If I speak any more louder, I may not have any voice left by the end of the session. So I'm trying my best to speak as loudly as I can. So another term that people commonly used is addiction. The commonly, I mean, used and at times even misused term is addiction, because addiction is again a mental health condition or a mental disorder. So what that means is it is diagnosed in a very specific way. You cannot just say that I am addicted. You need to have some specific symptoms and signs. Only then we use the word addiction. But when we use the word problematic use, that is a more generic or a more general kind of a term, which simply means that you are doing something which is leading to problems in your life. And it can be because of internet, social media, gaming, pornography, smartphone. So it can be specific to one of these activities, or it can include more than one of these activities. So that is another set of problem. So I'll just talk about explaining some of the symptoms of addiction. So when you use the word addiction, uh, I must tell you, these days, WHO, which is World Health Organization, it has recognized gaming disorder, which means people who play games. These may be online games, computer-based games, console-based games. So if they play these games in a particular way, which is leading to some specific symptoms and signs, it can be diagnosed as a mental disorder. And we do get patients who have this condition and we diagnose them. Now, since you are not going to be diagnosing them, so I won't complicate it. I'll give you simple 3 steps which are indicative that this person has addiction, possible addiction, because to definitely say whether addiction is there or not, they need to be assessed in greater detail. So one of the features is called loss of control. Now, what it means is typically human beings are in control of their behavior. So, for example, you can choose when to move your hand, when not to move your hand, when to walk, when to stop, when to drive, when not to drive, when to eat, when not to eat. So, we are in control of our actions. When people develop addiction, they lose this control. So, what this means is that they may not want to do it now, but they cannot help it and they anyhow start doing it. Or they may want to do it for 1 hour, but when 1 hour is over, they may not be able to stop and they continue doing it for 2 or 3 or 4 hours. So that is another loss of control. Or they do not want to do it on a particular day. For example, I have to study for my exams tomorrow. I know it is important for me to study, but still I cannot control myself and I will end up playing a game and I won't be able to prepare for my exam. So that is called loss of control. That is one indicator that yes, probably addiction is there. Second indicator is when you start neglecting alternate activities. So you are supposed to study, go out in the playground and play, do some household chores, take care of your health, sleep well, eat well. When you start neglecting these alternate activities and actions, that again is an indication that probably you are moving towards addiction. And finally, when you are already experiencing some negative consequences, for example, your academics are being hampered, or you are having physical health related issues, eyesight related problems, pain in your back, your neck, your thumbs, or you are having a negative psychological consequence. But despite of that, you continue to engage in that behavior. So that also is an indicator that probably this person is having addiction and needs appropriate assessment and diagnosis. So this is how addiction is tried to is screened and identified. Now these criteria must be present. All of them should be present before we diagnose them. So that is what I meant. So the word addiction is restricted in a particular sense. A more broad term is excessive and problematic use, which is way more common. There is a question: is there a misconception that playing online games increases hand-eye coordination, as WHO has recognized gaming disorder? So please remember, once again, I'm repeating, internet is not bad, games are not bad, social media are not bad. That is not what we are learning today. These things, internet, social media, games, they all have a good side to it. They can also help people learn new things, develop new skills, make money, improve certain cognitive abilities. So please don't confuse the two. We are not talking about the good side of it. It can have some positive effects. Many people make their career out of internet or smartphones or playing games. So we are not talking about that. We are talking about people who eventually experience a negative consequence. That is why in the beginning itself I told you the message won't be ban internet, ban smartphone, don't let them use a smartphone ever. No, that's not the focus, because it can lead to some good things as well. There are benefits of internet, mobile phones, games, social media, which we cannot deny. It's not that they are bad in any way. So that is not the message in any sense. I think there was another question. Nowadays, teachers are also forced to do many online tasks that affected their mental as well as physical health. So please remember, it is very important to understand the context. If I have to take this session online, it does not make me addicted to internet. It is not making problems for me. So this is internet helping us to connect without me and you have to travel such a long distance to be at one room. This helps us prevent having a room which can house 300 people. So this is technology helping us. So do not confuse this with problematic internet use. If you have received an email, it is a means of communication. So do not confuse it with a problematic use. If you are having an online call with somebody, that is connecting with people, that is not a problem. So if you as teachers are shifting to online space for your professional work, that is not internet addiction, that is not problematic use. Yes, you have to be very mindful, and we will talk about that, so that your physical health is not impacted. And there are ways to take care of your physical health, like eye health, back health, and things like that. But please don't confuse people who are doing using internet, mobile phones as part of their work or for a valid reason, that they should not do it or they should throw their phones away. That's not the aim. Yeah. But spending more time online is not suggestible. Please don't confuse, Manjuji. A person who is writing the code for the Zoom software will be spending 8 hours of his or her day online, because his or her job is to write that program. So spending 8 hours a day for that person is not bad. It will make him his living, and it will give us this software. So this demarcation is very critical. There are people who are online for many hours in a day because that's part of their job. Yes, they need to take care of their eye health, their physical health, their psychological health, but it doesn't mean that people should quit their job because it involves use of a computer or a mobile phone. That's not the message at all. Now, there are many simple ways which we can use to help ourselves and people around us, including the students. And these again are not very complex. Let me ask you, what is it that you think of that can be used to ensure healthy use of cyberspace? What is it that we can do? Please don't tell me turn off internet or don't buy a phone. Yeah, Manjuji has said if there is alternative as offline available. See, in many cases, even if there is an offline alternative, online may be better. It may be better, for example, you can write an application with your hand on a piece of paper, or you can type it. You have to see which is better for you, because that uses paper. And for the next application, you have to write it again. But you have typed it once, you can use it again the next time. So there are many layers through which we need to think before we simply say that offline is better than online. So at times online may be more efficient, less costly, and good for our environment as well in many cases. So please take a very holistic view before you decide whether online or offline is better. Parental control, striking a balance, more interaction, tracking the time, setting a time limit, fix up a time to use device, limited use, proper monitoring, use it wisely, use with parental control, use different apps, limiting screen time, parental control, monitor and supervision, maintain balance, healthy digital usage, use proper guidance, think before you click, great. Set boundaries, be aware, don't use it at late night, yes. Create tech-free zones, time bound usage, don't use it till late at night, great. So some of these you are already aware, but please remember, uh, when more aware about cyber hygiene, yes, set limited usage, time control, conscious use, do not take easily anything. Okay, so please remember, there are two ways of doing something good. Something good means in terms of changing our behavior. One way is to force somebody to change their behavior. What that means is, I impose upon you that you have to do it. That can change behavior. For example, you can force somebody to not go somewhere by holding them or locking them in a room. But please remember, when you make somebody change a behavior by force or under pressure, it does not last for a very long time. Because the moment that pressure is removed or that force is taken away, this person is likely to go back to their previous behavior. So, what we are trying to recommend here is that rather than we forcing it on them, we should help them understand how and what they can do on their own to help themselves. So that is the kind of kind of context we are talking about. So parental control, yes, it is a possible way, but at a particular age only, because beyond a age that won't work. Because please be sure that the kids, adolescents, and children, the next generation is much more tech savvy, and there are ways to go around the parental control as well. So if you do not inculcate this pattern or this habit that I need to take care of my internet use, simply by forcing them to change that behavior will be very difficult. It will be very challenging. Somebody says judicious use of social media platforms, handling the online intrusion of others, time restraints, and monitoring their internet use. Yes. So we are not talking about imposing, we are talking about encouraging and motivating them to think about the change. So the first thing that our job is, we need to create this awareness. We need to tell our students that internet, although has many positives, smartphone, although has many good things about it, if you are not mindful, if you are not careful, it can lead to problems. And this we need to tell to our students as well as to their parents as well. Because most people, when they see a smartphone, they don't see how can this be a problem, because it looks very safe, very innocuous. So we need to create this awareness that some people, they can and they do experience negative psychological consequences because of excessive use of these things. So they should be aware that it can be a potentially dangerous thing in some situations. So that is first thing. Second is, you will learn a lot about it, how to be safe. By safe, I mean how to manage your passwords, how to handle your financial transactions, how to keep your data safe. So those kind of things will be taken in a different session. It might have already happened with you or may happen tomorrow, but those are the behaviors that we need to tell them how they can avoid a cyber attack or a phishing attack or an attempt to hack your account or attempt to take away your password. So that is the second thing we need to teach them. So we won't discuss that in this session. The third thing that we need to tell them is be mindful of your expectation. So what that means is, when you turn on your phone or open your laptop or start a computer, please be very mindful why you are there. If your purpose was to find information, if your intent was to do your project, if your intent was to talk to somebody, stick to that intent. Do not use your presence in cyberspace to do anything randomly that pops on your screen. So please be very mindful. The second is, be mindful of your expectations as well. What that means is, for example, you are posting something online on a social media platform. So your expectations have to be realistic. Now you can choose what to post there, but you cannot choose how others will react to it. So your expectation cannot be that people will like what I have done. Your expectation cannot be that they have to like it. So be realistic. Your job was, or your goal was, to let people know what you are thinking. And that is your control. It ends there. You cannot decide how others will react to it. So please be very mindful of your expectation. Post, do something online, but remember that you cannot control what others will do about it, how they will respond to it. So that is very critical. And of course, as you mentioned, be cognizant of the time you spend. So being in cyberspace, you may lose track of time. It may be a good idea to set an alarm that, okay, I have to prepare this project. This is part of my homework assignment. I have decided I'll spend 30 minutes to find information. I have set an alarm at 30 minutes. I will stop doing that. So please be mindful, because otherwise you can stretch, you can go on. So help them understand that concept. Okay. So I have 6 more minutes, so I'll do that. Yeah. So every day spending some time reading the do's and don'ts while using internet. Yes, that is also helpful. So that is important. Another important thing that we need to help them learn is, do not use cyberspace as a substitute for physical space. For example, if you can meet somebody face to face, use that. If you can't, then use the cyberspace. If you can play a game in the playground, that is much better. So don't substitute a physical space with a cyberspace. Very simple basic tips: follow a healthy routine, and what that means is keep specific time allocated to specific activity. And there can be time for using a phone as well, and there can be time for playing a game as well. But make a timetable and then try to see how much time you have for it, and do not compromise on that slot. Do not think that that slot can be lying there or it can be done at any other time of the day. So having a routine will help you ensure that everything falls in place and you do not neglect or overdo anything. Exercise, eat healthy, try to relax your body, try to strike a balance. So these are some basic tips that you already must be knowing. You can reduce the number of applications on your phone, applications that you don't need or you need for a specific purpose. You can keep it, you can remove it, you can download it again if you need it again. So you can do that. You can manage the way you receive notifications. You can turn them off when you don't want to be disturbed. There is a silent mode. Use it. Uh, Keep it out of your reach when you don't want to use it. When you want to go to sleep, don't keep it by the bedside. Keep it on a table which is away, or keep it out of your room as well. Students can do that. They won't receive any emergency calls during the night, so they can do that. Do not access applications or devices at specific time periods. For example, watching screen, especially in the evenings or at night, is not a healthy thing because it disrupts our sleep. So try to ensure that you don't watch screens if you can help it at evening, during the evening hours or late at night. So that can help you improve your sleep. Be aware, as I mentioned, you educate, review what you are experiencing in terms of emotions, which is called reframing. Try to connect with the environment around you. This is called grounding. And finally, use techniques that relax you, which reduce your stress level. Because once you experience negative consequences, you need to settle down. You need to find ways that help you relax and come back to the normal state of mind. So this is very important that you need to do. You can use digital space to collaborate, to learn problem solving, to access new information, to be productive. So please remember, there is a healthy side of using internet, and we need to teach this to our students as well. That okay, be online, watch a video, but watch a video which teaches you a new skill set. So that is the kind of paradigm shift we need to bring in. Of course, be mindful of your posture, sit straight, take breaks, do not keep sitting for a long time, do not slouch in the chair, do not hold the mobile device below the eye level, keep it at the level of your eye or higher. Uh, Try to ensure that you are sitting comfortably, uh, your shoulders are relaxed, your arms and elbows are by your side. These are simple postures that can help you avoid pain in your wrists and your elbows. For every 2 minute, for every 20 minutes, try to take a break. At least try to look around. Do not stare at the same point. Try to blink in between. It can give rest to your eyes. Alternate between sitting and standing postures if that is possible. So those are some of the things that can be done. There are some signs which should alert you, which should warn you that despite of trying your best, you can still experience negative consequences, especially if you are blaming yourself for something that happened to you. You are feeling helpless. There are symptoms of hyperarousal, for example, not able to sleep, feeling very restless. There is disturbance in your appetite or your sleep, not being able to focus on your studies or co-curricular activities, avoiding others. If you prefer to stay alone, and you get irritable when somebody asks you to stop engaging in that behavior. So these are some indicators that probably you have significant adverse consequences and you should do something about it. If you have sadness of mood, which is lasting for more than 2 weeks, you have significant anxiety which doesn't let you do your daily routine, and you have ideas of self-harm, you must urgently seek help. You should not delay it. The help can be from multiple sources. we can create a safety net. Safety net is typically a group of people who are around the children who can help them. They can listen to them. They are not judgmental. They are not critical. They can be the parents, teachers, senior students, school counselors, which give them a safe space to talk about their problems. In case there are any cyber fraud or cyber crime related issues, you can always take legal recourse, and you will talk about that as well. What kind of legal help is available, so that can mitigate some of your psychological experiences. But if you are experiencing depression, anxiety, cyberbullying, cyber stalking, cyber grooming, or if there are any indicators there is addiction that might be setting in, that is the time to seek professional help. Don't delay it. If you have a doubt whether a particular child has some of these problems, try to motivate their parents to seek help at the earliest. Don't delay it, because delaying it will lead to additional problems. So to conclude, please remember there are multiple dimensions in which psychological well-being is affected in cyberspace. There are many adverse psychological consequences. One should be better prepared to handle this, because shutting away devices, removing internet is not going to be a solution. Be aware of the red flag signs. And if you think that your students need professional help, don't delay it. Try to help, try to connect them to a professional as early as you can. So I'll stop with that and I'll pass it on back to Dr. Angel. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, by the time we will take up 1 or 2 questions, I would request Sejal to put the attendance in the sheet, attendance link in the chat box.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Since we are only having discussion and